I was born on a late winter morning in 2001, a happy and healthy baby with wide, staring eyes and a crazy shock of brown hair that refused to be tamed. But when I was 1 year old, my father needed radiation treatment. He came home to our little apartment where we all shared a bathroom, a kitchen, a bedroom. He cooked me dinner. He gave me a hug. 10 years later, almost to the day, I was diagnosed with cancer. This story breaks my father's heart. Nobody warned him about the dangers that dose of radiation could cause to the people around him, particularly small children. He blames himself. I never have. I see what happened to me as an awful consequence of a world in which people are dying from entirely preventable causes. A world in which we're so obsessed with the idea of curing cancer that we don't stop to think, what if this never had to happen in the first place? Research shows that 42% of cancer cases are preventable. 42! Over the past decade, that's a grand total of 6.7 million people who could have avoided cancer, the equivalent of the populations of Nebraska, West Virginia, North and South Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska combined. That's far too many people suffering for no reason. So, in order to change the way we think about cancer, we need to realize why the current system isn't working. Why shouldn't we be looking for a cure? That sounds great! Some kind of magic pill you can take and boom, all better. There's only one problem. There will be no cure for cancer. That's a bold statement, but in the most fundamental way, it's true. There can't be one cure for cancer because cancer isn't one thing. It's a broad label over a wide variety of diseases, not unlike the word dessert covering everything from an Oreo to a 3-tier wedding cake. Researchers at Memorial Sloan Kettering described it well. They said that we used to think that all tumor cells would behave similarly, like these white gumballs, but we're now starting to realize that even within one single patient's tumor, you can have a whole rainbow of cells. And these differences are really important. They'll decide how cancer behaves and how it responds to treatments, which means the same medicine that can kill one cancer can cause the next to grow and get stronger. So there can never be one single treatment or one cure that takes care of all cancers, of all these rainbow gumballs. Instead, we're stuck with a mess of treatments and procedures that slowly poisons patients' bodies in the hopes it will kill their cancer first. It's torture, but we justify it by saying it works, so there's no other choice. But does it even work? Cancer is smart. It finds out what you're doing to try and kill it and figures out how to bypass that, getting more creative every time. Sometimes it pumps the treatments right back out of the cell. Sometimes, when a cell tries to commit suicide to stop the cancer inside it from spreading, the cell literally revives these cells from the brink of death and pieces them back together into super messed up zombie cancer cells. But sometimes, cancer doesn't even have to do that. Sometimes, just enough of it, just a few cells, survive the treatments and hide in the patient's body, waiting for that perfect moment to strike. Which is precisely what happened to me last spring when one of my scans for the first time in nearly 6 years turned up a new growth. I remember sitting there as the doctor tried to stumble through an explanation, thinking, this can't possibly be happening. I'm only 20 years old. I'm healthy. You said I was healthy. And even though I spend every day studying cancer, even though I knew this could happen, that it was likely to happen, I just felt so lost and so alone. But I'm not alone in facing this struggle. It's me and the 16.9 million other cancer survivors in the United States, each of whom has to live with the fear that their hard-won victory can be retracted in the blink of an eye. Look, I'm not anti-treatment. I mean, treatment saved my life. And every year we get better at making treatment safer, less painful, more effective, and more accessible. And as we have, the rates of cancer deaths have plummeted. But as long as cancer is able to fight back, as long as treatments require patients to be subjected to excruciating pain and horrible side effects, the most viable path forward is through preventing cancer before it happens in the first place. There is, of course, the medical and pharmaceutical end of this, which is investing more time and energy into researching medications like tamoxifen, which has been proven to reduce the risk of invasive breast cancer by 50%. But you don't need to be a biologist to make a difference. There are steps that each of us can take. Think about the campaign against smoking. It's been almost 60 years since the first Surgeon General's report established tobacco as a leading cause of lung cancer. The decline in smoking has been instrumental in the recent decline in cancer deaths, according to a study by the American Cancer Society. In fact, comparing it to what cancer deaths were projected to be at their peak without intervention, they showed that over the past few decades, more than 2.9 million cancer deaths have been averted. Now, smoking is unusual for being something that's so easily connected to cancer, but it's not alone. We know that obesity, UV radiation, and excess alcohol consumption are leading risk factors for preventable cancer cases. And unfortunately, all of them are common in the United States. We can replicate the success of the anti-tobacco movement by broadening the scope to these other risk factors and making sure everyone is aware of the dangers they pose. And there's more we can do. Screening allows for early detection, which means that we can catch the cancer before it has the chance to spread through the body and become more difficult to treat. But access to screening is extremely dependent on geographic location, race, and socioeconomic status, making certain groups far more likely to be at risk for cancer. For those of us who have access to these tools, we need to make sure to utilize them. And we need to devote resources to ensuring that everyone has access to the same opportunities as well. Cancer is a multi-billion-dollar industry, one that we contribute to with our small dollar donations. Think of all those 5Ks, toy and clothing drives, and door-to-door campaigns. Redirecting some of that funding towards primary care will allow us to begin to address the gaps in our healthcare system that are letting these cases slip through. Now, not every cancer case is preventable. Disease is an inevitable fact of human life, and it's caused by a complex soup of genetics and environment that can't always be controlled. But let's not forget that 42%. The fact that we could make cancer cases fall by nearly half if we eliminated these very controllable factors. Get screened. Don't smoke. Be aware of potential radiation exposure. Stop using tanning beds. Make sure everyone has equal access to the healthcare they need to protect themselves and their families. As for me, I still study cancer. I also still have my little growth hidden somewhere just in here. Balancing these two things isn't always easy, and every time I talk to my mother about it, she always says the same thing. Well, we're all going to get cancer eventually. Help me prove her wrong.